tonight. I know that we have a lot of bright, energetic future leaders in this room. And I'd like to congratulate naisA for convening this group of leaders, past, present, and future. I'd like to share a story about one of my heroes. He was born in 1908 in Baltimore, Maryland. His father was a railroad worker, his mother a teacher, both descendants of slaves. As a young child, his father took him to courtrooms. They would sit there and listen to cases. They would come home and over dinner, they would debate the case. They would argue, they would refine their positions, and learn about the law. And this young man learned the importance of the Constitution from an early age, and the impact and the importance of the rule of law, and what it means. When he grew up, he dreamed of going to a law school in his hometown, University of Maryland Law School. It was not open for him. It was segregated, and he could not be admitted. Undeterred, he came to a law school here in Washington, D.C., Howard University School of Law. And there, he would buckle down, study hard, and get serious, and graduate in 1933 as the first in his class. As a lawyer, one of the many things that he did was to sue the University of Maryland. He won, and that school became integrated. In 1967, he would become the first person of color to serve as a justice on the highest court of this nation. Justice Marshall opened doors for so many of us in so many different ways. He touched my life. I went to the University of Maryland Law School and saw his name above the law school library, which is now called the Marshall Law Library. A person who could not be admitted to that school not too long ago. And 70 years after he graduated first in his class from Howard Law School, me, as a person who benefited from his fight to integrate the school, would become an adjunct professor at Howard Law School in 2003. Adjunct just means that I don't get paid for teaching there. I have a full-time job. I'm a patent litigator. I have a science background, but I really believe that the law can transform lives and it helps people. And so as a teacher at Howard, I teach my students about patent law and intellectual property. But we discuss many issues related to social justice. Every class, I talk to them about voting. The privilege that we have as American citizens to have a voice in the process, to select our leader in the highest position to lead this country, to have a voice in selecting who gets to make our laws in Congress and represent our community in a fair and unbiased ways. We each have a voice in that. And that did not come free or without sacrifice. Many people have died for that right that we so take for granted these days. And I tell my students that they need to vote. They need to be informed and they need to be part of that process because that's what makes this democracy work. To me, heroes come in all shapes and sizes. And many heroes of mine, they have humble beginnings. Let me tell you about Senator Mazie Hirono. Who knows about Senator Hirono? She is the first Asian American female senator in the United States. That happened in 2013, just 5 years ago. And since then, she's been advocating for our community, fighting hard. And you hear about her on the news. She's very active on the Judiciary Committee, involved with the ongoing confirmation process for the Supreme Court nominee, among many other issues. She advocates for women's rights. She advocates for our community, for all Asians, and for all Americans. As Asians, we're not a separate group. We are but one piece of the fabric of America. And by the sacrifices and the dedications that took before our lives by many great African American civil rights leaders, we're in this room today. We're able to go to the best colleges, seek good jobs, and have these types of opportunities because of the sacrifices that were made before us. Many heroes of mine are unknown to me. As recent immigrants to this country, my family and I lived in subsidized housing. I didn't know it was that when I was living there as a 12-year-old who didn't speak English. And so as a lawyer now, when I represent a single mother living in Washington, D.C. with 5 kids, trying to make ends meet, but about to lose her home without a lawyer, and I'm in the landlord-tenant court representing her and the rights of her 5 children, I see the faces of an immigrant family struggling to make ends meet. We are part of the same community. We have heroes who are really young. I have a hero of mine who, when she was 8 years old, she saw her mom trying to run for the president-elect position of the DC Bar. She showed interest and enthusiasm and was very encouraging. And one day after school, she came home and said, "I'm going to run for class representative." And I thought that was really great. She wrote her own statement, she practiced, and she ran through it. And to me, regardless of whether she won or lost, she was a hero. Because as an 8-year-old child, I was deathly afraid of public speaking. And it's something that I would have never dreamed of, putting myself out there and taking that risk. And she did it all by herself. Well, she didn't win. She lost to a boy whose campaign was to have a Joe Day during which everybody will be called Joe. So through that experience, we both learned an important lesson, which is know your audience. I think that all of us in this room were here because of all of the people and heroes and mentors and teachers who have lifted us up during our difficult times. How many of you are immigrants or have parents who are immigrants? Raise your hand. So you know the story. Senator Hirono had small beginnings. She was born in Japan, and her mother left Japan and escaped to America with her kids to get away from an abusive husband. When they came here, they had nothing. The senator worked at school cafeterias and had a paper route herself to help support the family. We have many of those stories in this room. And when we look at heroes, small or big, they have small beginnings and they take small steps so that together we can be a part of a community that we can be proud of. As you go through your career, you will have some tough days. You will have the long hours and the uncertainty and the big questions on your mind. And when you have those days, remember that the days are long, but years are short. Remember that you're supported by your community. We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. So when you have a tough day, look up and reach for the stars. Thank you.